Action.
Action. Huzzah. So I thought it would be good to look at a couple of hands from the season finale last week. In particular, two pre-flop all-ins that we had. Cue ragtime. Hand one. We start the hand with 6 players. I have got 8-7 suited, under the gun 6-handed.
What time was this from? We're freeze out at this point.
We're freeze out.
Okay.
Right. So 8-7 suited. Let's see how the hand plays.
Ooh.
Oh, tense. I stick in a raise. Reuben folds, Colin folds, Rouge folds, Curly Joe folds.
Ooh.
Action on Lord Perks. So, tell me what your thoughts are here. And I guess, Colin, what I mean is not just with Ace King, but how do you think you're playing? What's your overall strategy in this spot?
6-handed. Under the gun. I think the only choice here is to ship it.
Yeah. And what kind of range of hands do you think Perk should ship it in with here?
I would say any 2 face cards, maybe, and reasonable ace, any decent pair, or maybe even any pair.
Would it help your decision at all if I showed you that this is broadly the range of hands that I'll be raising with from this position?
It's useful information, yeah, certainly. But I think from a decision-making perspective from Perks, it wouldn't really. I mean, given that I'm sitting there with Ace King, even if we disregard that, if I'm sitting there with my range, then I'll still be ready to ship it just because of the short stack.
Yeah. And you suggested range was sort of any 2 face cards, any pair, any decent ace, and so on. Okay. So I had a look to see what Perks actually did in this position. And these are the hands that Perks has 3-bet all in with pre-flop in a similar situation where he was the big blind and he had sort of that 8 to 12 big blinds range.
Right.
So it actually looks fairly tight.
It really does.
In fact, if we look at these 2 hands, these were both near the end of rebuys. This ace-8 suited up here and the jack-10 off. So even though, they're some of the looser ones, you can see why he would have shoved in.
So armed with this information, what does it make you think about if, let's say, for instance, I forget whether or not he did shove. So let's say Perks did shove, armed with this information. Are you tempted to fold at this point?
I think if his range is quite tight, I should definitely be factoring that in my decision. Absolutely. It's tighter than I imagined. So I spent a lot of time in Ecolab having a look at this spot. And I was trying to calculate what range of hands Perks should push all in with. So if as you suggest, one good strategy might be just to fold, but with a certain range of hands, shove all in. And you gave an example of that range of hands. So I sat and spent some time in Equilab and figured this out. And the actual optimum way to play that strategy is to raise with shove all in with about 14% of your hands.
Yeah.
So I don't think actually that's too dissimilar from what you described. Let's see if I pulled it up here. Yeah, this is what that range looks like. So just to be absolutely clear what this means, this is the range of hands where Perks could shove all in and that would be a profitable thing to do on average. Even if he shows me this chart and says, play perfectly against it, these would still all be profitable shows. So I think actually that's quite close to what you outlined. Maybe it's a bit tighter in some spots. So like King Jack offsuit, Queen Jack offsuit, Queen 10 suited and not shoves in this line. So with all that in mind, let's see what actually happens on the hand. Perks does shove. And now it's decision on me. I'm getting pot odds of 37%. I've got 8-7 suited.
I think taking a game theory approach as well, given that you're looking to win the tournament, and the sheer amount of chips you've got, plus, I mean, if you win these chips, you need to beat Joe to win the tournament, to win the league. And even if you lose this all in here, you're still going to have more chips than Joe. You've already got chips in the pot. You've got pot odds of as the ones on the screen. I think it's a good call, to be honest.
Okay, so let's have a look at what I should do in this spot. So this is my optimal calling range against what we think Perks should be shoving with. And bear in mind, in reality, we think you might actually be a bit tighter than this.
So you are a little bit out.
Just a little bit out, yeah. So 9-8 suited would be winning 37% of the time or more. 10-9 suited would, but not 8-7 or 7-6 suited.
Interesting.
So I just wanted to quickly summarize all three strategies that we've looked at. So on the left here is the range that I'm raising with, first to act with 6 players. In the middle here is Perks' optimal shoving range if his strategy is to either shove all in or fold. And on the right is what I should call with. And you'll notice actually there's very little difference between what I open with and what I call with, what I should call with. So when Perks does shove, I really should not be folding very often. Ironically, these are the 4 hands that I should fold, and one of them was 8-7 suited. So what do you make of that as an analysis?
It is interesting. I mean, I've always seen Perks as quite a loose player, so it's a little bit of an eye opener.
Ah. So what's the elephant in the room?
It's that one there.
It is. What about just calling? After
I
all,
could make a case for just calling.
Yeah. The pot odds were excellent on the call, so Perks only needed to have 21.2% equity to justify a call.
Yeah. My pot odds. My strategy. The reason why I think it's not unreasonable to call is you could, think about doing the old stop and go tactic of whatever the flop, just getting it in.
Yeah,
and
that
then
is true.
yeah,
And while that's not something I would do, that's something that Perks definitely does do, and I think he does that reasonably well. I think he has a fairly good line for that. So that definitely is a factor.
yeah. I mean, I think if you're not willing to utilize that tactic, then I think you've only got 2 options really, and get them in pre-flop or get out while you can. I think that it's definitely right to try and get them in. I think if he had any
Yes.
thought that you were calling that pre-flop raise, he should absolutely be getting it in with ace king. He should absolutely be getting it in with king queen, king jack, maybe even king 10 suited. And to hell with the flop.
So I had a look at the possibilities if you call, and I was trying to construct the range that Perks should call with pre-flop if he's going to adopt a calling strategy. And even if we assume that because Lord Perks will be out of position, his range will be weaker than my range, so he's not going to realise his full equity. So I did a bit of research on this, and the best estimates I could find is that you could expect to realise about 85% of your equity there.
Yeah.
So I put that through Equilab, and actually what it recommended if you're adopting a calling strategy, the most profitable calling strategy is just to call with every single hand, including 7-2 offsuit.
Yeah.
Because his pot odds were so excellent. Now, I will say this strategy is contingent on being able to play after the flop really well. Because I don't know, I'm not going to be a pushover there. And if you think maybe you can profitably call with 7-2 offsuit, maybe
Well,
that's a big
I
ask.
think the problem is though, if you're calling with well, if you're calling in that situation, if you perks, um, then for an extra 1.2 big blinds, you're gonna be in there for, 8.5 big blinds behind.
Yeah,
Um, and the pot is already gonna be 5 big blinds deep.
basically.
Yeah, about 5.5. Um, I just I would wonder about if you could ever get away from it, no matter what the flop is, profitably. Let's say you're sitting there with um 7-8 suited, in Perks's position, and the flop comes down Ace King Queen,
Yeah,
Rainbow, no diamonds. You got no draw, and quite frankly, your only hope of winning that pot is probably going to be 2 7s or 2 8s.
e-
So
exactly.
is I can't see an argument for just flatting if you perks at that point. I think no matter what you got, if you're if it's your tournament life on the line here, I think it's gamble time.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to recommend that people play this sort of game theory strategy here because
Hmm.
it's going to be so hard for an actual human being to play and get 85% of their equity. Uh, by way of giving a bit of hope, I did look at how far we would have to reduce this number before it started becoming correct to start folding your really rubbishy hands. And I think it was like 65% equity.
Right.
So because Perks is so short stacked, I think you should be able to realize 65% equity, even if you just adopted a strategy of get your chips in when you make a pair and sometimes bluff.
Yeah.
That might be quite a good one. Okay. So this sent me into a bit of a rabbit hole. And
Hey, I was wondering where we were going there.
nice. So I looked into what about Perks stopping a strategy of sometimes calling and sometimes raising.
Well, it would, seeing as we're talking in metaphors, it would put the cat amongst the pigeons.
It surely would.
Have you got a slide for that one?
I'll drop one in the edit.
But it would put the proverbial amongst the proverbials, and
So I tried lots of different ideas out in Ecolab, and what I'm showing here are some of my ideas. And as you can see, it looks like raising, by which I mean shoving all in, about 10% of the time is the best strategy. And with the other hands, you can call for the pot odds with any of the other hands, including 3-2 off, 7-2 off, and so on.
yeah,
Although in practice, maybe players should fold out the weakest part of their range.
yeah,
But this turned out to have the highest expected value of all strategies that we've looked at so far. Shoving with these hands highlighted here and folding out the rest. And maybe if I do some wizardry in the edit, I would suggest this is not that far from the strategy that we saw Perks employ in this situation when we looked at his
yeah,
Hold'em
indeed.
manager. Okay. And against that range, the range that Perks would shove with if he was playing optimally, I'm actually only getting 35% equity and I needed 37. So it definitely would be a fold for me.
It's a pretty hand that you had, though.
It is a pretty hand.
It looks, it's one of those that probably looks better than it is.
Yeah. Um, I was curious to know how bad my decision was. So in order for me calling to have been the correct decision, Perks would have to be shoving a range a bit like this, 17.3% of hands.
Mm.
And as we've seen, both on Game Theory Optimal play and Perks' actual play, he's not playing as wide as this.
No, which is a bit of an eye opener for me.
Shall we see how the hand played out?
Let's see the inevitable.
I called. Flop the 7. Looking good. And I busted him. A bad
On the
decision
flush draw
rewarded.
as well.
Yeah. So
He was in a world of hurt.
at the time, I genuinely thought I probably did the right thing, but in analysis, that wasn't that great.
He wasn't a million miles away though.
Key ragtime, hand two.
Right, there we go.
So we skip towards the end of the tournament, and me and Curly Joe, the two big stacks, are left playing heads up, not just for the week, but for the season. And this hand rolls around.
Yeah. This sort of heads up finale had a bit of an inevitability to it. It was natural end. It's how it should have gone, really, I think.
I was hopeful that this would happen.
Yeah. I mean, given that I missed half the season anyway, I'm just just saying I would have beaten you all.
Well, you might have took some points of Curly Joe. So two good hands. Let's see how this one commences. Curly Joe raises it up with two big blinds.
Yeah.
And I elect to 3-bet to 7.1 big blinds. Okay, it's a bit like before, Colin. I'd like to invite you to step into Curly Joe Lee's shoes and tell me about your strategy here.
So I think I would certainly want to take a flop at this point with my King Jack. I see no reason to be four betting with it. So I think a flat call here is perfectly sound. It's a tough one because people do tend to play a lot looser during heads up play.
Yeah.
So I think with Curly Joe, I would certainly, unless I'm holding aces, kings, queens, jacks, ace, king, ace, queen, so on and so on. I would never be re-raising at this point. I think you've got two options. Is if you got a sort of average holding and you want to take it further, I would be flat calling.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be probably be with any pair, not necessarily any pair, maybe fives or better, and any decently suited ace.
What about
Any
hands that you might have raised with a bit light? So things like King 5 suited and Queen 9 suited, Jack
No,
10 off.
I think I would be getting rid of those. I think I
Okay.
would still. I mean, I would still be pausing for thought with the three bet, and it it looks like a particularly strong one. This, given that it's. I mean, is that a pot size raise or is it slightly more than pot size? Either way, it's a
Slightly below
strong
pot.
one. Yeah, so I think I would certainly, unless I had something where I would particularly want to see a flop, something that has a lot of potential, like a suited connector like this, a suited ace, a pair of some sort, um, king queen, king jack, king ten, queen jack suited. I would certainly call with one of those, but I wouldn't be re-raising
Before
with
betting.
anything apart from premium.
Okay, good stuff. Um, I had a look because the situation was quite complicated. We had a lot of chips left to bet. It wasn't so easy to put this through Equilab. I did
Yeah,
a bit of research and I found some suggested heads up ranges from Upswing Poker. And on the left here, we have the set of hands that Curly Joe could potentially have open raised with, according to their optimal strategy. Now, I suspect Curly Joe actually plays quite a bit tighter than this. Do I think he would have open raised me with? Oh my goodness, I don't know how I did that, but yeah, for sake of argument. Do I think he would have open raised with 10-4 offsuit, for example, or 4-2 suited? He might have done.
yeah. Why not? Why not? If he, I mean, the way a lot of people like to play heads up is they see they just see a min raise as like the equivalent of completing.
Well,
So
absolutely. I would play that way as well. But I do
yeah,
wonder, and maybe if I'm feeling proactive, I'll drop it in the edit. whether Curly Joe actually does play 82.5% of hands from a raise from the button. I'm skeptical.
Maybe, but I do think that he likes to see a lot of flops.
Agreed. So, given that the big blind faces a range, this on the right-hand side is their suggested range for me to 3-bet. And in fact, they liked a size slightly larger than the size that I used. And we see in there all the very strong hands that you would expect. We've got queens, which is the hand that I actually do have. And by way of some weaker holdings that you might consider to be 3-bet bluffs, we've got the ace-5 suited, ace-4 suited. We've got all these low suited connectors down here. So I can 3-bet, and Curly Joe will be left wondering whether I have genuine strength or not. So I think I'm probably doing something not far away from this in terms of how I 3-bet heads up. And oh yeah, so I just wanted to show, for sake of illustration, that against the range of hands that I would 3-bet with, King Jack suited is getting about 46%, so not far off even money against that range.
And he needs 35.
And he only needs 35, yeah. So folding is out of the question because the pot odds are so good.
Yeah. But I can't see an argument for a raise with for a 4-bet here from Joe.
Yes. So I did have a look at what various sources recommended Curly Joe did in this position, this exact position he's in. And as you said earlier, you'd only be 4-betting with a very tight range of hands. So so this is sort of a synthesis of various things that I looked at, but broadly speaking, pair of nines or better, ace queen or better, could consider a 4-bet. And in fact, that range would have 65% equity against my range. For sake of the pot odds, however, the sources that I found were recommending a very wide calling strategy. So a bit like the hand we looked at earlier with Perks, because the pot odds are quite good, they would recommend, for example, the Curly Joe should call my 3-bet with Jack 2 suited, Ace 2 off, 5-4 suited, pocket 2s, and so
Any
on.
pair lower than 8s. Well, including 8s, yeah.
Yeah, and the others because they're mostly being 4-bet, if you see what I mean. Yeah. So I thought that was quite interesting. And it probably makes me think that I've been overfolding to 3-bets heads up because I do not play as loose as this, facing 3-bets. Should be borne in mind as well, on the hand with Perks, one of the things we factored in was that he was out of position, so he was unlikely to realise full equity. Curly Joe here has the luxury of being in position on the hand as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so with all the theory in the bank, let's have a look and see what actually happened on the hand.
Ooh.
Curly Joe, 4-bets, and I 5-bet shove. Okay.
Interesting.
You're getting pot odds of 32.7% in Curly Joe's position. You've got King Jack suited.
According to this, he's got a 32.3% chance of winning as well. I mean, he doesn't know this
against queens.
Yeah. Against queens. So he's according to the pure stats on the screen, he could still put it down here, but I think if he's in it to win it, like Joe often is, he's a little bit of a maverick. I think once all those chips are in, I would be in that situation that I so affectionately call the hate it and call situation.
I had to go at estimating what my 5-bet shove strategy might be here. And this is what I came up with. Now, I can't say for certain, and I will potentially have some lighter holdings in there. But this is quite tight range, and I don't think King Jack suited fares that well against this range.
You put Ace Queen suited in there as well?
Well, I didn't, but perhaps in reality I might have shoved because he's calling and having to play the hand out of position really an option. So it could be that this is a very idealized, tight version of what I might do there.
Yeah.
And against that range, King Jack suited would be getting 25% equity, so probably should fold.
I mean, I also think that you would almost certainly be 5-bet shuffling with Ace King off as well.
Yeah, you could be right again if I don't feel the calling is an option.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good observation. So maybe the question is, well, how wide would my range have to be to justify this call? And this is the illustrated range. So actually, if I was playing just a little bit looser, get my ace queen suited, ace king off, tens,
All those
nines,
hands that I just said.
all the hands that you just said, absolutely. Then the king jack suited becomes a call. So really, it comes down to an evaluation of how loose Curly Joe thinks I am to 5-bet shove there, and just don't know. Would I shove with nines? I might, definitely.
I mean,
Wonderful.
the only things if he's calling and that is your range, the only things that he can really hope to see is ace queen 10 9 9.
Yeah, that's it. Tens or nines, ideally. Otherwise, ace queen. Everything else, bit ropey.
A lot ropey.
All right.
Queens wouldn't be a disaster for him, given that he's still got that 1 over card. But even so, it's as we can see from the odds here, it's like 2-1.
Should we see how the hand played out?
Let's.
Curly Joe makes the call. Ouch.
And that happens. Yeah. And then you spend the rest of the tournament just trying to overturn a monstrous stack.
But yes, after a short battle, Curly Joe prevailed and took the tournament and the season.
And I must say, a deserved win for the season. If a touch fortunate at this point.
Absolutely. Well, he did win 4 times, and that is extremely rare that happens in the season. So with that in mind, time for a season roundup.
Aha.
So I pulled together our little podium for the season, and as you can see, Curly Joe wins 4 tournaments, winning the most tournaments. Colin, second most wins, despite only playing half the season.
Yep.
And myself, Perks, Rouge, and Vampen picked up 1 each.
Well, a lot of second places. So it must have done your Poker Stars balance a bit of good.
A little bit, yeah. It was definitely on the wane after my performance in the spring.
Yeah.
But yeah, 6 second places. I can't believe it after not losing a heads up for over a year, and then 6 second places in one season. That's quite something.
I think a separate video of what on earth's going wrong with your heads up game.
Absolutely. And on the third place step, Moomin 5 times third place.
Yeah.
Surprising. Worrying?
Not really. I mean, I think Moomin, as good a player as she is, often seems to limp into that place on the podium. So yeah. I think just from observations, I mean, I think if she was a bit more attacking throughout the rest of the tournament, loosened up a little bit, although she has loosened up a lot in the past 2 years. I think that she would certainly see more second places and first places.
Absolutely. So, on that note, congratulations to Curly Joe. Onwards to the next season.
And upwards.
And upwards.
There's so much wrong with that picture.